Well, thank you to our fantastic guests, Larissa, Cheryl, and Phil, and to Rupa for a great moderating job as always, for a robust conversation that touched upon so many interesting things happening in tech and restaurants and products and elsewhere. Larissa will sign her book tonight at the reception, and you'll see all three tomorrow when Larissa moderates a conversation on advocacy. Cheryl will introduce a much anticipated cooking demo with the chefs from Bacoa, Finca, and Fogon. And Phil will share his enthusiasm in a couple of recipes in a cooking demo tomorrow where he talks about his enthusiasm for research and development. It's now my privilege to introduce the next session, General Session 2, Honoring Food Heritage and Creating Maximum Flavor on the Menu, where our presenters share enthusiasm for biodiversity and food heritage. First up will be Giselle Kennedy Lord, a writer focused on biodiversity and the co-author of The Ark of Taste, Delicious and Distinctive Foods That Define the United States. It was released last year. She spent a decade as a documentary videographer specializing in food and agriculture. I met her as the Director of Communications for Slow Food USA, where she encountered the Ark and has been an advocate of biodiversity and the preservation of historical foodways ever since. Most recently, she worked as marketing manager at Neutral, the first carbon neutral food company in the United States. She'll do a presentation, and then we'll have two cooking demos. After her will be Stephen Satterfield, who is the chef and co-owner of Miller Union in Atlanta, Georgia. Miller Union is a celebrated, seasonally driven restaurant. And Stephen is also, I met him through Slow Food many years ago, but he probably does not remember. But for so many of us who are interested in whatever you want to call it, whether it's farm to table or seasonally driven, Stephen has been a real leader here. And so he has two cookbooks. Root to Leaf was released in 2015, and last year he released Vegetable Revelations. He won the James Beard Foundation's Best Chef Southeast Award in 2017, and Miller Union has been recognized as one of the country's best restaurants by Eater National, Esquire, and Bon Appetit. And then last, we have Andrew Main, who's the Senior Associate Director, Culinary Event Strategy and Plant Forward Experiences for Stanford Dining, Hospitality, and Auxiliaries at Stanford University. And so prior to that, he was trained as a chef in New Zealand and operated his own catering businesses in both New Zealand and California. He is a big enthusiast, as you can imagine, being on a college campus, for education, for plant-forward menuing, and for fermentation. And so he will do a demo where, in part, he talks about how he is able to take that ancient process and get students excited about it today. So it is my pleasure to welcome Giselle Kennedy Lord.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm so happy to be here today and quite humbled by the company I'm in, I will say. This is my home state, always excited to be back in California and in Napa Valley, no less, one of my favorite regions in the world. I first came to Napa for my 21st birthday, which is an unusually good choice for a 21-year-old. I've been here many times since, and I'm really excited to talk to you about biodiversity, sustainability, color, flavor, all of these things. I'm really excited about how this last conversation will tie in a little bit to me kind of bringing it back to single ingredients and just like the beginning of every meal. So people come here from all over the world to taste different varieties of one single species of fruit. That's what's happening. And isn't it remarkable? I think that in and of itself is sort of a remarkable thing that was created by the world of wine. This is a global culture that we all, many of us enjoy very much. And what the world of wine has done so well is take this one agricultural product and turn it into just this whole expansive, exciting, delicious world for us all to explore. And I want you to think for a moment about the idea of you or me or someone else walking into a tasting room to taste 6 different wines that are presumably 6 different grapes. They're all grapes. You probably know the names of them. You might know something about where they come from. You might know where they come from originally, and you're probably amidst the plants themselves. So just to kind of warm you up, give me just holler at me or throw up your hand and tell me how many varieties of grape you can name. What are your favorites? Just show me. You can name more than 5, so raise your hand if you can name 5 grapes. Great. And I think this is a really unusual thing that in the world of food. But what I get really excited about, the sort of thing that I have really centered my life and my research and my studies and my work around, is that variety exists throughout everything we eat and drink. We have already lost more variety than we still have, unfortunately, but we still have quite a lot. And I believe that it's very much worth preserving. The Ark of Taste is about that. I knew I was going to forget I had this thing in my hand. And this is just a quick, I'll let you guys do your own looking into this book and what it's about in the Ark of Taste in general. But the Ark of Taste is essentially a long, long collective list of ingredients that are varieties of food. And they have some significance either culturally, historically, socially, or agriculturally, and so on, to a group of people or to a place. The Ark of Taste was created as a response to losing all these varieties that we once enjoyed, that once grew somewhere by some hands. The U.S. Ark of Taste, which is what the book I co-authored with David Shields is about, is focused on the Ark of Taste in the United States. Many of those foods are indigenous to this country. Many of them are not. Many of them were brought here by different groups of people for different reasons, or by different motivation, and the Ark of Taste tells each of their stories. So it will tell you the story of the Christmas lima bean and the Marshall strawberry and Cook's corn and the Olympia oyster, one of my favorite oysters, which is now in my part of the world is now the Pacific Northwest. And these are things we can all be really excited about and really proud of. People really connect to the fruits of their own landscape. I imagine that everyone in this room has a few favorite foods that you can tell me a story about. And for me, that's what I live for. I want to sit around the dinner table and hear why it is you love that particular blue corn so, so much, and that one tortilla you had in Mexico City that just made your whole body come alive. And so that's what the Ark of Taste is about, telling those stories. I did not grow up with any awareness of any of this. I grew up in Southern California in a city called Torrance. It's a lot of concrete, a lot of strip malls, a lot of chain restaurants, delightfully near the beach. But when I was growing up, we had this one very large strawberry farm right in the middle of the city, which was exactly as out of place as it sounds. And there was something in me that I've speculated many times in my adult life that was always really drawn to food growing, anything growing. Maybe it was that there wasn't much there, but it was a farm and it grew food, and I could eat that food like right next to the farm at their farm stand. I didn't know enough at the time to question the fact that that very long farm stand counter had one single variety of tomato. I do love tomatoes too, but it had one single variety of strawberry. I also didn't know enough to question the sheer size of that one strawberry, which was massive. But I loved strawberries, and so I ate them, and my mom would just bring home bowls of these strawberries, and I would eat them till I was sick. I now know enough to know that the hood strawberry is the best strawberry that is. That's my favorite. It's this teeny tiny little strawberry, and it's super duper sweet, and it grows very well where I now live. The reason I say that is because I think that is the most common experience. That really what this comes down to is awareness. That we think a strawberry is a strawberry, or a banana is a banana, or a tomato is a tomato. A corn is corn. Sometimes it comes in different colors, but it's nobody's fault, really. It's really that we don't, the general population isn't growing up in a place or a way that really lets us know or puts in front of us the expansive variety that is available in our food products. And so this comes down to biodiversity, and the reason I say we've already lost more than we still have. So the numbers kind of keep going down. The one number that really stands out to me in this, these numbers are from the FAO, and these numbers are specific to food and agriculture. So biodiversity is a concept that is assigned to anything living, but we're talking about specifically plants and animals and other things cultivated, raised, and harvested for food. 9 plant species account for 66% of total crop production. So this is an issue. I don't think I need to tell you why. But what I want to talk about is what happens when we lean so heavily into single varieties of things. And the easy thing is that we lose all the other varieties. That if we just have one type of potato, we're going to lose all the other potatoes because no one's going to grow it, no one is motivated to grow it, no one can sell it. So we're going to maybe eat some of that potato in a small region. This is the case with a cherry called the Black Republican cherry that grows in the Columbia Gorge where I lived for a long time. It really only grows there because it was not viable for the commercial market. It's not big enough. It doesn't yield, it does yield quite high, but it's too soft. It needs to ripen on the vine. The seed is kind of large. And so it's still around, but that's only because farmers kept it on their land because it does yield a lot, so it makes a lot of blossoms, and it's very attractive to pollinators. And those pollinators are supporting all the bings and all the Rainiers that they're growing in these orchards in the beautiful Columbia Gorge that are being taken away. I think 99% of that fruit is leaving the Columbia Gorge. And that's the way it goes. And that's okay to an extent, but what I want to ask of you is what can we do to integrate more variety into wherever you're working, whatever you're doing, if you're in a kitchen, if you're in a university, and if you're at home. How can you seek out more variety so that you can integrate it into a menu, into your offering, into your own life? Because biodiversity is vital. We cannot survive with just one of anything, and it's just like people. Like, I don't want to know just one type of person. I want to know lots of different people, and I want to have lots of different stories because that's what inspires us, that's what moves us, and that's the spice of life. Aside from the fact that the environment, the earth, is better off, and in fact cannot thrive or survive if we just keep whittling down to singular varieties of things. One story or memory I had in thinking about what I would say to you today is sort of the moment at which I discovered that variety was even a thing, that a banana wasn't just a banana. And when I say banana, I think we all think of the same banana. Can anybody name that variety of banana?
Cavendish.
Cavendish. So the banana is sort of an unfortunate and a very poignant example of what happens when we lean into one variety of a fruit or vegetable or really anything we're eating. There's lots of books written, or there's a couple great books written about it, and I encourage you to learn more if it interests you. I went to Peru when I was probably 19 or 20 years old, just sort of like waking up to agriculture and just like maybe I want to live in the country and farming a little bit around here. I was going to university in San Francisco. I was sitting in a cafe eating a slice of passion fruit cheesecake, reeling at this thing called passion fruit, which I had also never had before, and I absolutely love. The flavor is outstanding. I look across the street, and there's a woman pushing a cart that was just dripping with bananas of like all different colors. And I remember sitting there and just staring at this cart and thinking, are those bananas? They're purple, they're red, they're practically blue, they're orange. They were yellow and they looked nothing like the yellow bananas I had at home. And so something just sort of like a switch kind of flipped in my brain, like, oh my gosh, if there are that many different kind of bananas, you guys, that means there's that many different kinds of potatoes, there's that many different kinds of strawberries, there's this whole world of food I've never met. And what could be more thrilling, like my young, very, very food enthusiast self, thinking what could be more thrilling than sort of looking for those things and going to the farmer's market and thinking, oh, okay, those are 4 different varieties. And that is really a moment, an experience that kind of changed the course of my life and my career. And I don't cook professionally. I told someone the other day that I think about food professionally. And that was really a very, very key starting point for me. I've traveled a lot in Latin America, and this is really, it's an incredible place in and of itself, gastronomically, culturally, and in every way. And I have had so many more experiences of that, of going to a place and finding what seems like 1,000 different kind of potato. The first farmer's market I went to in Portland, I remember walking up to a booth that had 27 different varieties of apple. Again, mind blown. Like, I couldn't believe it. And I only could name or knew maybe 1 or 2 varieties. And I promise you, every 27 of those taste different. And it's probably best used for something different. So I think that the function of the Ark of Taste, the reason for the Ark of Taste, is to tell the stories of each of these varieties so that you will know that they exist and why they are important. And I think in doing so, this lifts up our culinary heritage and our cultural heritage, because I believe they are one and the same. And I believe that the best way, or maybe the most exciting and delicious way to access cultural heritage, is to dig into culinary heritage. To get to know the foods of the people you love, or the people you're interested, or the people that they seem to have something great going on and you want to know more about it. Go try their foods, learn more about their foods, find out where they come from. I didn't come from a household rich in variety, but I did come from a culturally rich kitchen. My mother's from Lebanon, and it was often the case that my mother, my grandmother, my aunt would be in the kitchen bundled up cooking the dishes that I came to know as my heritage and sort of the color of my life and where I come from. And I use that as my avenue to learn about who I am and where I come from, and I use that as my avenue to learn about other people. And when those two worlds collided, I think that's like where the magic happens. When I was able to put together this like enthusiasm and excitement about growing food and going to the source of my food so that I could have access to more variety, and then putting that together with the dishes that I knew and loved and exploring other cultures' dishes, that to me is what gets people excited. I mean, isn't this what we talk about, that adobo you had or the shawarma you had? Like, we can learn about each other, and we can learn about the environment around us. So I think that my sort of, before I move on, I think as a nod to this idea of celebration, I think that the charge of the Ark of Taste, and for all of us making food, is how can we use food to celebrate who we are and who we all are, not just we as individuals. Bring people to your table and let them learn about who you are, celebrate who you are by the dishes that you make. Celebrate the growers and the seed savers and all of the people around you who are keeping those foods alive. I believe these stories alone are worth preserving, but we can't really keep them alive unless we keep the foods alive. And so they just go hand in hand. And so the Ark of Taste, in telling these stories, is also making a very strong case for biodiversity. The essential nature of biodiversity, literally and figuratively. Not only because the environment needs it, but I think we need it. I think we need it to be able to keep the color and vitality and flavor in our lives that we so enjoy. I don't know yet where you work or what you do or what your general day looks like and how you put together a menu, so I can't really tell you what to do to integrate more variety into your kitchen and to celebrate culture and heritage and all of the work that you do. But these are a couple places to begin. And the two chefs that will follow me, I think, are very expert at doing this. I got to meet Steven Satterfield also at a slow food thing quite some time ago, and I've never been to Atlanta, so I have never had the pleasure of eating at his restaurant, but I know that he is very well versed in these two things and looking to what's around him, what's in season, and how he can use those to make the next best bite you've ever had. And the problem with the market problem, this is a very consistent thread throughout the book, that a single ingredient or a food product begins to fall out of favor, or it disappears, or somebody has to work very, very hard to keep it around because it's not hitting those boxes for the commercial market. And generally what that means is that it needs to stay a little closer to home, because at the top of that list is shippability, and a lot of these things just aren't very shippable. So in looking to integrate more variety, I encourage you to look to where you are. What is the bounty of your region and your home? What does the agriculture and the landscape around you have to offer you that you can get really excited about and cook with and make something wonderful with? And then in turn, how do we translate that and communicate that to the people that you're feeding, to the people that are eating? And how do we raise that awareness so a kid like me who thought a strawberry was a strawberry, there's just one variety, it's that one that grows at that weird farm down the street, how do we let people know there's so much more out there, and there's so many cooks and food professionals, many of whom we'll get to learn from and be with in the next couple of days, who are doing this so well to really put the beginning ingredients at the fore. And that's what the wine world does so well. The grape comes first, and then comes the wine. But you know about the grape, and you're excited about it. So how do we get people to know about it and get excited about all this color and flavor and variety we have out there so that we can preserve it? And I think sort of the ultimate question is, how do you lead your eater to their own Peruvian rainbow banana cart moment? That moment of discovery of, oh my God, what if all those bananas taste different? You know, or putting something on a plate and say, I thought I knew what this tasted like and I was wrong. Not necessarily wrong, but that's just one version of it. So storytelling nowadays is a many-splendored thing. I think that we've moved into this digital age, and we just got to hear from a couple really wonderful storytellers, which is fantastic. And I think that we have to be as creative in our storytelling as we are in our cooking in order to really communicate what is so wonderful about the thing I think we all do because we're all here, which is food. And whatever sort of angle you're coming from, how do you tell that story? Is it naming the variety on the menu? I have definitely had that experience of, I remember picking up a bottle of tangerine juice, and I noticed that they had named the type of tangerine. A tangerine juice is not like a very common thing. I think it was in a wine shop or something. And I thought, oh, this is wonderful. I don't know this variety of tangerine, but the thing that does is make somebody stop and say, oh, a tangerine's not just a tangerine. There's probably a lot of different tangerines. California grows the Ojai tangerine, the Pixie tangerine. There's like tons of citrus in California, tons of different varieties. They're all a little different. They all taste a little different. So how can we tell those stories? How can we put those ingredients at the front of what we do so that what comes behind it is the culture and the history and the really important story of people who started out in this land, who came here either by choice or by force and built an agricultural landscape and a culinary landscape that we really enjoy and that I really think is worth preserving by any means necessary, frankly. And the book, these are sort of my here's the sort of title cards for what you might want to do to get inspired or to do this work in your own kitchen. Again, maybe you're getting all of your food from one source. So how can we shift that? How can you change that? How can you get to know your growers and what they're growing around you? And be proud of the things that are growing around you. I think in the book there's a lot of stories of ingredients that are really keystone for a place, like Carolina gold rice in the Carolinas. I mean, that whole place was built on that rice. And learn that story. Spark curiosity in your cooking if you can. Spark curiosity in yourself and in your own home, because if food isn't fun and if food isn't delicious and flavorful and cultural and just absolutely exhilarating, then what's the point? I think that we have 3 opportunities a day to just get excited, and I try my best to take all 3 of them every day. It doesn't always work out. We all are busy and we have other things to do, but I want to encourage you to explore the ways in which you can do that. Get to know the 600 varieties of strawberry there are in the world, or there's thousands of varieties of grapes. Use that as a framework. How can you apply that to the foods you cook and how you present them so people can get curious and excited and eat really well, and we can keep that color and that culture and that vitality on our landscape and on our plates. Thank you.
Okay, so that was a really spirited discussion. Thank you, Giselle. And we're going to hand it off to Stephen Satterfield.
Hello, everybody. Hey. That was very inspiring, and I love thinking about all the different varieties of vegetables. It's definitely what gets me going. Like Jennifer mentioned before, I have 2 books. One's called Root to Leaf. It came out about 8 years ago, and my latest book came out last year around this time, Vegetable Revelations. And Just kind of to summarize the philosophy of each, Roots to Leaf being my first book, was really about seasonality and encouraging the home cook to try to shop at a farmer's market if there is one in your area, or just to think about the seasons and very simple presentations and recipes that you can do at home. Vegetable Revelations, coming out a good bit later, really for me was about all the things I discovered since my first book. And a lot of it for me was about adding more complex flavors to the vegetable preparations to excite the palate. And also they were actual experiences that I had that I wanted to share with the reader. So a couple of dishes from the book. I'm going to start with a delicata squash dish. These have been already cut and the seeds removed because I'm making basically a dukkha from the seeds. And in the fall at Miller Union, my cooks really get annoyed with me because I make them save all the squash seeds from all the different fall squashes, and we come up with different ways to utilize them. Sometimes we're not successful in utilizing 100% of them, but it is a great challenge for us to find flavor and texture with these little gems inside. So obviously the flesh is the prize for the fall squashes, but I think the seeds really hold a lot of power. So I have removed the seeds and they've been roasted. And I'm going to actually start by making the topping. And so I have the roasted seeds. They were tossed in a bit of peanut oil, and they're going in here. And I also have roasted peanuts, so you can see the theme here. And I am from Georgia, and we are the largest peanut producer in the States. And I have a little paperback about, it's all peanut recipes, 25 peanut recipes that I did with short stack editions. I'm doing half the salt. And I've got some black pepper, cumin, and coriander. And I guess I'm putting it all in here, right? Yep. There you go. So dukkha is a North African spice blend, or Egyptian as well, and really has a lot of great flavors. It's usually nuts and seeds and spices that can be, how does this work? Everyone's different. Oh, there we go. And so I'm just going to pulse it into a coarse paste. I want to get those peanuts ground up, so I'll leave it on for a minute. And traditionally, this is used in as a topping for fish or vegetables. It's dry, but it has a lot of flavor. And so whatever you're putting it on, you want to have a bit of moisture. So you can leave it more chunky or you can make it more fine. It's all about the texture and the flavor. So now I have the squash here. And delicata squash, some people call it the sweet potato squash because it does have a thin skin that's edible. And so I'm just going to cut it into rings. So I cut it in half, straight down the middle, crosswise, and scoop the seeds out. And then this allows you to cut into rings. And you have these great little pieces that look like, when you dress them in the dukkha, it almost looks like a everything bagel, which I like the presentation of. So I go all the way down to the end here and just cut off this part. And I'm going to toss these in some oil and roast them. So it's just all about making them, kind of the same thickness, so they're going to roast at the same rate. Man, I need somebody like this everywhere I go to clean up behind me. Thank you, Rebecca. And so I was working on this recipe for the book well, it's actually something I developed prior to Vegetable Revelations, but I definitely wanted it to end up in the book. We served it in the restaurant with some roasted duck breast and a plum sauce. It's funny, in the southeast where I live, fall squashes come out beginning in August and they go through October. So we don't have, because it's hot there and they ripen early and they dry out quickly, we kind of have to use them pretty quickly. And most of the local organic squashes, even though they're cured and dried, they don't last as long as like a commercial squash, so we just try to use them up quickly. And then we see some of the more hardy varieties like the acorns and the bigger pumpkins that will last through the winter. So I'm going to toss this with a little bit of the oil and season it with the remaining salt here. This one works. And you just want to just get it nice and coated. And I'm just doing only salt because I've got all these other flavors in the dukkha. And you just want to make sure everything's coated well with the oil and the salt, and they're just going to go straight onto a roasting pan that is lined. Little soldiers on here. And that's going to be 375 until they're tender, which is about 20, 25 minutes, something like that. Thank you. And with the magic of television, we have some already ready to go. Look at that. Right. And then you just take these and, you can do it by hand or with. And actually, I think if they were coated with a little bit more oil, it might work out better. Just a touch. Yeah, I'm going to toss them in. Or actually, the little bowl has some oil in it still. Or no. Which one is it? The one we just used. There we go. Great. Just so I can show you the coating, because these are pre-roasted, so they're not quite as moist. And then you just dip it in here, and you have these nice little everything bagels. It's fantastic, and it's really good to serve them with like a little yogurt sauce or some harissa or something like that. Definitely one of my favorite fall squash preparations, and this actually ended up in a New York Times article about working with peanut oil, and we have a farmer that grows nuts and seeds for oil, and we did a little story on him, and this ended up in the New York Times. So it's great full circle peanut story here. And so another dish that is in Vegetable Revelations, I call it confetti salad, and this really ties into Giselle's talk about all the different colors and varieties. This to me is sort of like a salad that beats the winter doldrums. I suggest eating it in January when you're trying to, do your post-holiday cleanse and eat healthier. And I'm going to get a mixing bowl from you. And so this is all the suggested roots that can go into it. So carrots, radishes, golden beets, turnips, watermelon radish, daikon, any of those like kind of hardy winter roots are excellent sort of fodder for this recipe. And it's essentially just a lot of these different things that are shaved on a mandolin and cut into batons, julienne, if you will. And so I have some Chioggia beet here, which is a really nice flavor. And I don't like to use the red beets in this because it just tends to turn everything red. So I'll use the golden or the candy stripers, and they work out well. I've got some watermelon radish here, some turnip and carrot. And then I'm going to, because, apple's going to turn brown, I'm going to wait and do this one later. But you don't have to put a fruit in here, but I really like the presence of fruit in this, just to give it a little bit of a sweeter, fresher note. My favorite way to prepare an apple is to cut it in quarters and then take the core out at a 45-degree angle. I do this with apples and pears exclusively. And then you get a great little flat surface for shaving on a mandolin. This is one of those times that you really just want to make sure you only cut the fruit. You guys know what I mean. And then so all of this is going to get dressed in just a vinaigrette that we're going to make in the bowl. I like to use a little bit of hot chili. So I've got some, you can use jalapeno or serrano or any kind of fresh chili, or you can put dried chili in it. I particularly like apple cider vinegar with this because you've got the apple and it just has that nice tang to it. A bunch of different herbs, whatever you have on hand. I think the kind of more soft and sweet tender herbs are better for this. And today I've got dill, parsley, tarragon, and chive. And then for some crunch, some pumpkin seeds or sunflower seeds are really great. And I just, because it's kind of healthy, you got to add something fatty to it. So I like to put feta cheese on there. You could do chev, or you can do no cheese. You can keep it vegan. And this is one of those things. Like in the book, I feel like this is like for a home cook, maybe a little bit more of a challenge to shave all these roots and to cut everything by hand, or maybe you have the julienne attachment for your mandolin, but it's worth it, and it can be meditative, and you can touch and feel all the produce and really kind of tune your vibrations to it, if you will. Every time I make this, people just think it's such a pleasant crunch, and all the different flavors really shine through. And I just love all the different colors that you get, and celebrating the biodiversity of winter, which is sometimes not thought of as a time to really eat a bunch of fresh produce. But I will say I feel lucky to live in the South because we do have 12 months of growing season, and even though there's less light in the winter, we still have all the great roots and the hardy greens, and we still have deliveries and farmers markets. So that's pretty exciting. I know that some places shut down for the winter time. Any of you ever been to Atlanta? And anyone ever been to Miller Union? Oh, there's one. Hey, hope you had a good time. Okay, so I'm not going to cut up all this apple because it's a little boring, but we'll throw this in here. And we're going to go ahead and add all the other things. So I've got the hot chili. Season it with some salt. I only like to put just enough of the vinegar to coat. And this is a neutral oil. I think this is sunflower. I also recommend grapeseed or something that's not going to overpower. Like, you could totally use olive oil, but I think I just gravitate to that so much that I really wanted to try to look at this as being the vegetables take the lead, and there's no oil that's distracting you. We're going to chop up some herbs as well. I've got my chives already cut. And I love dill in everything. I didn't used to like it when I was young because I thought it made everything taste like pickles, but now I realize that it has much more complexity than that. And I've got some, I love the flavor of tarragon with the winter roots. It's such a great, nice complement to the earthiness, is to have that sweet note of that kind of licoricey flavor. Tarragon and dill, I always just line them up in lengthwise and just cut crosswise one time just so they don't get bruised. And you can, I don't know if any of you can smell this, but it smells good. You can smell it. And then some parsley. Again, we're just going to do a little chiffonade on that. And both of these dishes are going to be served tomorrow. This one in the morning and this one in the afternoon, I think, something like that. So keep an eye out for them. And we all know that it's not delicata squash season, so I think there may be some other substitutes for that, but you'll get the gist of the flavor. All right, I'm just going to toss that together. You can see how colorful it is. This is a really great thing to, I'll make a big batch of this, and I like it when it's first dressed because it's super crispy, but it also is great the next day. It just gets a little more wilty with the salt and the acid and fat. But here, we'll plate it up. And then I just crumble the feta across the top. This is nice feta. And this is, you could also just make this your desk side lunch in the wintertime. Finish it with crunchy roasted seeds, and it's ready to go. So yeah, you'll get a chance to taste these tomorrow. Keep an eye out for them. I love talking about vegetables. If you see me walking by in the hallway and you want to chat, just grab me and we can talk. I'm very interested in what's happening in other parts of the world and other parts of our country, and I love, what Giselle was saying about how the different regions, have these own little kind of pockets of things that are available just to certain areas. In fact, she mentioned the Christmas lima bean, which I had last night at someone's home here. When I was lucky enough to go to dinner with some friends at a winery, and they made some Christmas limas from the dried lima beans. And I've never actually eaten them before, and I was so excited when I saw those because cooked, they looked like dark gigante beans, like almost black. But when they're dried, they're mottled black and white and brown. And I saw it in the jar, the dried ones, and I was like, oh my God, it's a Christmas lima bean. I've never had one before. So I was super excited to try that. And just that I get excited and geeked out about all the different diversity that's available in the vegetable world. And it's definitely what drives me. We have a chalkboard in the restaurant in the hallway that always lists what's in season. And it's really, that's kind of the starting point for all of our menus, is whatever the farmers are bringing in and harvesting that week. We make a list, we check the menu, we make adjustments, and we go from there. And it's great to see some of these younger people come through our kitchen. And I've learned now that a professional kitchen is basically a teaching kitchen, because you're going to have people that don't have the life experiences or the exposure or knowledge. And you see the light bulbs going off, and it's pretty amazing to watch, some of these young people get exposed to ingredients that they've never seen or tasted before, just because they're working with all these different aspects of the vegetable world that are not commonly found in the supermarket. And we're lucky to have so many growers in the Atlanta area. Like I said, it's a 12-month season, and we have at least 15 different individual farms that we buy produce from. We also are able to get locally sourced grains and dairy and cheeses and all kinds of great ingredients. So the inspiration comes from those things, and it makes my job really easy, because those things are just inspiring. So we have a minute to spare, and I'll spare you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Stephen. Now let's welcome Andrew Main.
Good afternoon to the 200 of you that paid to be here, and welcome to the 25 billion bacteria, fungi, and yeast that snuck in on your bodies to be here. Today I'm going to talk about the world of fermentation and how that relates to what I'm doing at Stanford and how it relates to who we are as humans. 99% of our unique gene makeup is bacteria, and unfortunately 1% is only humans. So we are a lot more of something else than we realize we are. So 14,000 years ago, there's evidence that man started to farm and get milk from domesticated animals. The environment that they were in allowed the fermentation to happen, sometimes to the benefit and sometimes not so good results. The, is that better? Cool. All right. And then about 7,000 years ago in China, they started to actually use environments to create the outcomes, such as the misos, the alcohols, breads that we now see in our everyday diets. Louis Pasteur in the 1800s actually worked out what fermentation was and what it was made up of. So fermentation is a lactic acid environment, which has a very low pH. It means that in terms of food safety, thank you, things like salmonella, listeria, and botulism are not able to proliferate, which means these types of ferments are very safe for us to eat. And in the absence of refrigeration, it's meant that we've been able to travel and set up as humans, create communities. My work at Stanford has been very my work at Stanford is in the dining halls and in catering, but we've also have a great relationship with the outside of Stanford, i.e. the Sonnenberg Microbiome Lab, and Christopher Gardner, as most of you will probably know, who is on the Netflix series, You Are What You Eat. So we actually swap ferments that we're doing. We meet up. A lot of the ferments that I do make, I send them to the lab and they send me back these awesome little charts, lots of colors, with all the breakdown of the different bacteria that are in them. So a lot of the information from the Sonnenberg lab is that we know a lot, but we don't really know that much. So applying it to making these statements that fermented food is going to cure this and that, we're not there yet. It's not like the drug companies that spend a lot of money getting drugs to market and then telling you what they can do. The fermentation, because it's probably the return on it isn't as big. It's a little bit slower, but we're very fortunate to have a lot of interaction with the postgrads. So Eliza Caffrey, she's been fermenting and making kefir in one of our kitchens. We're putting that on our tasting table for the kids or the students. I've been doing a lot of ferments. So we have a farm on the campus, and this sort of supports the arc of the taste, which is a lot of what they're producing there I'll take and I'll ferment it. We've done Cape berries, we've done peaches, we've done persimmons, we have made vinegars, we've made this one I made 10 days ago, which is a rhubarb ferment. This is a cauliflower turmeric, and this is going to be this is in our dining halls at the moment. You know, when you go to Costco and buy those huge bags of garlic, pre-peeled, and they sort of tend to sort of fluff up and you have to throw them out. If you ferment them, they last forever. This is ramps. These just came into season, so I've fermented these. We have blueberries, which we put in sparkling waters. And you got to be careful of the blueberries. They can get a little bit sort of alcoholic and sort of a little bit bubbly. So but again, it's limitless in terms of what you can ferment. I think the traditional sauerkraut that you get in the can, which is very white on your bratwurst, I think that's what a lot of people associate with. So in the dining halls, I've been doing the plant-powered pop-ups and sort of listening to the opening speeches. It's about how do you get engagement into people adopting plant-forward dining. And a lot of what I've found is putting the food out on a buffet, it's just putting it out there and people just grab it and it has no meaning. But when you start to curate it and put it together on a plate, So whether it's a puree with a roasted cauliflower, with a crunch and this and that, you're standing there, you're plating it, you're engaging with the students, and you're getting that rapport with them. That's where the magic lies, because I've built up a small following, but every time I see them on the campus, they're like, when's the next pop-up? We now have a 3-day pop-up series coming up till the end of this quarter. And I think that's how you elevate the whole plant forward menuing. It'd be like going home and your mum just leaving the food on the counter every day. You sort of get there and there's the food, as opposed to sitting down or listening to your grandmother or whoever has sort of created those beautiful dishes in your past that you still resonate with. It's that familiarity, it's that contact, it's the interaction that gives more meaning to the food. So I'm going to show you how to do a ferment, which I'm doing at the university, which I'm doing 60-pound lots, and it's not that hard. It's a lot of physical, and it's a lot of interaction, it's a lot of fun. So first, we take the shredded, we take our vegetables. So today I'm doing the red cabbage, we've got the fennel. On the fennel bulbs, I'm even using all the stems, they all go in there, the fronds. The onions, I put a lot of rosemary in my ferments because, again, getting away from that traditional sauerkraut funk, with the rosemary sort of gives it a slightly different flavor profile. Later on, if you do taste these, you'll realize that the fermentation actually takes a lot of sort of the astringent flavors out of the food, and it sort of highlights the sweetness of the natural flavor of the food. So the garlics and the ramps, sensational. I mean, you can almost drink them as a sweet drink, or maybe put some vodka with them, I don't know. So I'm going to put all these together. I'm using some caraway seeds, and then the garlic and the ginger, and if I'm using turmeric, I'll just normally blitz that with a little bit of water. I'll add that, and then I'm going to use the red beets, which gives it the magical colour, and then I've measured the salt out. Now this is where once you put the salt on, and I don't like to use rubber gloves because the sterile gloves, they're not, I think there's no, I don't know where they come from, and I think, part of fermenting is the passing on of bacteria. So we're all sharing. Every time you hug someone, you're sharing bacteria. So this is where, once you get the salt on here and start scrunching, the vegetables, it's kind of like a massage. You guys are going to play nicely together because you're going to spend 10 days in the jar. It starts to break down, all the liquids from the vegetables come out, and we start to get these beautiful vibrant colours from the salt. So it's 2% salt that we do use. And some people say that's a lot of salt, but the bread has about 3% salt in it. Cheese has 6% salt. So I think fermented foods, just because it's salt just been added, if you're having sort of a 25 to 50 gram portion, it's not really that much salt. So enjoy it. Don't throw the liquid out because that's where all the microbes are. Then give it a good scrunch, let it sit for a bit, and then we're going to put it into the jar, and then just keep forcing it in here. And it's amazing, this will all fit in here. We'll pack it down, it gets a bit messy. So this is the sort of thing you can do at home. Leave it on the counter. It's going to bubble. Okay, you can do, yeah, here we go. See, I need you. Come and work for me. Okay, there's that. It's a bit messy, sorry. And you can keep packing it in there, and then there we go, a little lid, and then cool. So then we'll put this on top, which is a cabbage leaf. And I've been using these lovely little fermented tops. It's from a company called Krautsauce, which you get them online. This is one I did yesterday. So it's got the moat on top. You put a little bit of water in there so it keeps it fully anaerobic. And there we go. So I've packed it in there. I did this yesterday. I put the cabbage in there. And because there was a bit of room, I cut a piece of the beet and just put that on top. So this is going to keep pushing it down because you want the liquid to be above the actual whatever you have in there. And so after about 24 hours, if there's not quite enough liquid, I've got a little brine here which I made up, and the recipe's there. I'll just pour this on just to cover it, and then we will put the lid on, and then it sits there for 10 days, 7 to 10 days. I like to let it go a little bit longer. It gets that nice tangy flavour. And so I've been introducing the ferments into what I've been doing in the pop-ups. The garlic, the pickled, the lacto garlic I put into my hummuses now, and whole roasted cauliflower heads with rosemary in them, turmeric rubbed on them, really bake them for a long time in the oven, and then it's like a cauliflower carving station. We do the hummus with the tahini and the pickled garlic. We're putting the cauliflower. We're getting the crunch on top from sunflower seeds. And again, it's a delicious interaction with the kids, and they love it. So the next thing we also do is I've been doing these tacos with the soy rizo, which is an excellent product. It's got a lot of great paprika-y flavors. I've been using the Okinawa sweet potatoes, which when you cut them, they have a lovely purple inside. So I'm dicing those, roasting them with the rosemary and paprika, and then the soy rizo, roast that separately. Then I mix them together, and again, the magic of what we do here. Adding a whole lot of roasted and toasted pepitas, and then we're taking our blue corn tortillas, getting those on here.
Mike, sorry about that. I'm having a little, it's very hot. Okay. Do you use we have an audience question. Do you use other vessels for larger production, non-glass, Lexon?
Yeah, so I'm trying to avoid plastics. So a lot of people do use those vegetable tubs. You can either the Lexans or even those white kind of buckets with the lids on, like you get at Home Depot. I'm trying to get away from that. So at work, I've got the 15-litre stoneware Crocs with the water moats. That's the bet. Probably, I think the next step would be to invest in some stainless steel containers. I think the influence and infiltration of plastics into everything we do have has sort of got a bit invasive. So it's either the glass at this level for some of the smaller ferments, which you don't need a lot of, but the bigger ones, definitely the Crocs. And as I said, I can get about 10 kilos, which is just over 20 pounds per crock. And once you get into a nice rotation, you can sort of churn quite a bit out every 10 days, which is nice. There's a toasting. And actually, John and I were just laughing at what Stephen was doing, even just his lovely salad. Once you start, does anyone here do black and white photography? Once you do black and white photography, even color photography, you start looking at the world slightly differently. So everything now with fermentation, you look at anything and you go, I got to ferment that. So we were like going, gosh, Stephen, we could get that into a jar, and it looked delicious. So even yesterday we got some conical cabbage in. which is in season, and I've mixed wakame with it, which is a seaweed, and that's going to be ready in 10 days. So again, bringing in the sea vegetable aspect into what we're offering in the dining halls. We also did supported a lifestyle and medicine. So the School of Medicine starting to look at, especially through the Sonnenberg Lab and with what Christopher's doing, is this: how do we get doctors more confident in recommending people to have a change in diet? And you can't do that unless the doctors are confident in telling people what they are doing. So we did great menus. I was presenting to the students. Again, we're introducing the ferments, and it was a 10-week course, so we're sort of supporting them with all the fermented foods we're doing. So this is a nice little taco with these flavors. We also do a tostada, which we use calypso beans. We're trying to get a more diverse bean action into the dining halls. And the blue corn tortillas, the Okinawa sweet potatoes, and this is a Coco June coconut yogurt, and it's got avocado, jalapenos, and put that on top. It's quite delicious, and the avocado and the coconut yogurt play beautifully together. And we've just finished it off with this is called a lime quat. So it's a lime crossed with a kumquat, and finished that on top. And then we have some homemade sriracha that we could put on top as well. So thank you very much.
So we did have one question that asked about ferments for home. How long are those good to keep around? How long are they safe for?
We had some Cape gooseberries from the farm, which I did about last August, and still going strong, quite delicious. I think some of the fruits you need to be a little bit wary. They will maybe turn to a bit more alcoholic, but the things like the krauts, 3-4 months, so long as they're crunchy, they last for a long time, but you should be eating them quickly. So yeah, one of these will last me probably two weeks at home.
And I have a question for you about, this is like my worst social anxiety fear. So I have a question for you about, did you find that students, that you had to talk them into the ferments, being interested in them, or was it just they tasted and they liked it, or were they coming from backgrounds that already, they were very well versed in fermentation? Like, what was that engagement?
I think it's, the taco, so I've added the beet sauerkraut on top. So in El Salvador on the pupusas, they put curtido, which is the vinegared cabbage. So this is a slight play on that. I think you tell them it's that, but it tastes so good, it's not like you have to try and trick them into it. So it doesn't resonate that they're sort of having something that's way out there. And as I said, I think I'm playing around with, if you're getting carrot in there, if you're getting the onions, the background flavors, you can start developing sauerkrauts that are a lot more accessible. My daughter, originally hated it, but she loves the cauliflower one now, and it's crunchy. The turmeric, it's the rosemary, all those flavors make it a lot easier for people to approach. So again, we're not sort of over highlighting where people become afraid of approaching it. We're just sort of incorporating it. We're not saying it's vegan. It's sort of that sort of moving away from those trigger points and just saying it's just delicious.
Well, it looks like we're out of time, but Chef Andrew, will you join us at the reception if people have further questions?
Sure.
For that? So I want to thank Giselle and Stephen and Andrew, so let's give them a round of applause. And Rupa, can I have you escort Giselle, Stephen, and Larissa? They will be signing their books during the reception, so you can talk to them there. Can I have you do that? So we'll have Stephen, if you want to join Rupa. And then, as Stephen said, his confetti salad will be served at tomorrow morning's break. And the roasted delicata squash with squash seed dukkha will be served at tomorrow's lunch. So very excited for that. We are ending day one of Global Plant Forward Culinary Summit with an opening reception in the Jackson Family Amphitheater featuring tastings from Oatly, Unilever Food Solutions, and a Food at Google Innovation Station. As I mentioned, we have our book signers that will be happening. And then day two will start tomorrow at 8:15 with breakfast on the first floor atrium. If you are new to our conferences, you're in for a treat. Our culinary team, under the direction of executive chef Tony Sakaguchi, makes the best conference food around. So make sure you join us at 8:15 for breakfast, and then we'll come back here to Ecolab at 8:45 for our first session, which is focused on the growing popularity of vegan cuisine. So thank you so much.
This vegan grilled squash banh mi is a delicious twist on a traditional Vietnamese banh mi sandwich. In this plant-based version, marinated and grilled butternut squash takes center stage. Paired with pickled vegetables and fresh herbs, it's no wonder this is one of the world's most beloved sandwiches. To start, let's make our pickled vegetables. Dissolve sugar in rice vinegar. Add some julienne daikon and carrots. Cover and let this marinate for 12 to 24 hours. Remove the vegetables from the pickling liquid and set aside. Now for the squash. Here, I have sliced squash that's been marinated in a mixture of soy sauce, vegan fish sauce, and Knorr Professional Liquid Concentrated Vegetable Base for an extra pop of umami flavor. Next, grill the marinated squash until tender. Keep hot. Now we're ready to assemble our sandwich. Spread each side of a French roll with some creamy Hellmann's vegan mayo. Build the sandwich by adding slices of the grilled squash, sliced cucumber, our pickled vegetables, sliced jalapenos, and a mixture of herbs. Here, I have Thai basil leaves, mint leaves, and cilantro. Add the top of the French roll, slice in half, and serve. The smoky and sweet grilled butternut squash, tangy pickles, and refreshing herbs are such a delicious combination. Made with Knorr Professional Liquid Concentrated Vegetable Base and Hellmann's Vegan Mayo, this hearty sandwich is a great vegan option to add to your menu.
My name is Magnus Young, and I'm the Chef de Cuisine and Culinary Manager at the Cliff Family Winery and Brisketteria Food Truck in St. Helena, California. The food truck can be found parked outside the Cliff Family Tasting Room, and we serve a seasonally inspired menu with organic produce from our farm on Owl Mountain. This stack cake gets its beautiful color and sweet flavor from watermelon molasses and watermelon butter, and is a new take on a classic Appalachian dessert. Let's start with the watermelon molasses. First, break down a large seedless watermelon into chunks and remove any seeds. Working in batches, puree the watermelon in a food processor. Strain through a fine mesh sieve over a receptacle and press gently on the solids for maximum extraction. I'm going to save some of my puree to use later in my watermelon butter. Transfer the watermelon juice to a shallow pot and bring to a simmer over medium heat. Skim the surface and reduce flame to a low simmer. Reduce the molasses by about 2/3, which takes about 4 hours depending on the pot used. Transfer this molasses into a smaller pot as this will prevent scorching around the sides. Simmer for about 1 more hour. The molasses is done when it has a thick, syrupy consistency and a dark burgundy color. The watermelon molasses can be used on many items, from proteins to desserts. Transfer to a sterilized mason jar or airtight container, then cool and refrigerate. Onto the watermelon butter. This is a fun twist on apple butter. We're making a jam-like watermelon butter that we'll add between our cake layers. Transfer watermelon puree to a stainless steel pot. You'll recall we set some aside when we made our molasses. Add a 1/4 cup of lemon juice. Bring to a simmer and reduce by half. Add a cup of sugar and bring the temperature to 212 Fahrenheit. Stir in some apple pectin and continue to simmer for 5 minutes. As you can see, it has a beautiful color. Cool and transfer to a container. For the cake, we'll start with the dry ingredients. In a large bowl, mix together all-purpose flour, sugar, ground cinnamon, ground ginger, ground cloves, and baking powder. Watermelon is available year-round and pairs nicely with the fall spices in this stack cake. Add the wet ingredients including melted butter, watermelon molasses, 3 large eggs, buttermilk, and vanilla extract. Fold together the wet and dry ingredients until a thick, homogeneous batter is formed. Pour approximately 2 1/4 cups of batter into 3 9-inch parchment-lined cake pans. Gently tap the cake pans on a countertop to evenly distribute the batter. Bake cakes for 20 to 25 minutes in a 350-degree oven. When done, they should be pale and golden in color. Use a cake tester to verify. Transfer the pans to a wire rack to cool for 20 minutes. Once cooled, run a spatula around the edge of the cakes to free them from the pan, and carefully invert them onto the racks. Remove the parchment paper from each cake. Cool for 3 to 4 hours. Now, we're ready to assemble. Carefully slice each of the 3 cakes in half horizontally to create 6 total layers. Using an offset spatula or pastry brush, liberally paint each layer with a 3/4 cup of watermelon butter and stack the layers on top of each other. Some historians believe that stack cake was a 19th century Appalachian wedding tradition, where each guest brought a single layer cake to the ceremony, which would then be assembled and spread with apple butter. So now that my cake is assembled, dust the top with powdered sugar. Serve the cake with a dollop of whipped cream. Although naked cakes seem like a recent trend, this beautiful rustic stack cake is an old classic with staying power and a beautiful and fun way to showcase watermelon.